Good morning. It's Monday, October 29th. This is a continuation of the Board of Selectmen's meeting. We had a prior non-public session. Let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Do we have any public input? All right. Being none, let's move to review and approval of minutes. First is for public minutes for the 15th of October.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And then we also have non-public from the 15th.
I have no issues.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And those shall remain sealed, correct?
Yes.
All right. Next, we have library budget. Library trustees, come on down.
Come on, God, it's such a long commute.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot safer than coming back from Boston. Welcome.
Thank you. I don't know what you have or don't have.
I think we have the summary and the sheets.
Okay, now do you have a, the 5-year or the multi-year historical?
We do.
Okay, throw that one out.
Not valid.
Well, we had what happens sometimes is that you have one person doing something in Word, the other one doing it in Excel, and the multi-year, the numbers didn't jive, so we had to realign the numbers.
Well, that's on
The total.
your report, not on
Yeah.
the town report.
No, this is on Marcia's, the stuff that Marcia did.
On the back.
So just toss that one out. I apologize for the size of the font, but being the Luddite that I am, I could not change my AirPrint to a different orientation.
Jesus.
So the numbers don't change, it's just...
What numbers?
Hmm?
What's the number?
Did you bring a glass? That's the question.
Okay.
So the numbers are the same, but they're
In a smaller font.
Well, no, they're not the same.
It's not
It
that
is-
you're hiding anything, is it?
I want to hide about the little law school. No, it's just that the salaries and the equipment, they came through on the horizontal side in the wrong locations.
I see.
So go with the one I gave you. As I say, nothing materially changes. Very simple budget this year. Down. As you can see from the narrative that Christie had put together, salaries follow the 2.7 COLA and the 50 pay periods.
Do you have one or two people that are not getting merit increases?
In 2019, 4 out of 4 of 6 staff members have reached step 15 on their pay grade. That's right.
And on the budget summary that I'm looking at, I've got 161,740.
Need an extra copy. Thank you. Excuse me, go ahead.
But there's a plus 8,090, what's that?
That's over last year.
Oh, okay.
That's the
So that's the increase.
Yes. Same thing with the oil heat. We did based on the
$1,000.
$1,000 because of the change in the oil prices this year. Everything else that has an asterisk has not changed. Our numbers are down this year. Of course, we're not buying any equipment or furniture this year. And our technology number was down from last year. So if you exclusive of salaries and benefits, the operating budget is a decrease of $1,640 over last year. And that, in a nutshell, is that.
FOL pledge, Friends of Library.
Friends of the Library. $16,750 we anticipate coming from outside sources to offset the operating budget by law.
Because you have to do the gross amount.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the library budget for 2019, 4550-0. In the amount of $217,079.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thanks.
Before I leave, I will give you the public an update on where we are with our financing for the proposed addition. As of Friday afternoon, we have, all inclusive of our town capital reserve funds, our cash, our pledges, and the matching funds, we are up to $1,049,789, which is well over half of where we are. And our capital campaign goal of $500,000. We're $331,000 plus now, but I'm confident we're going to get to that $500,000 number. It's going to be a moving target right straight through the winter.
Yep,
As long as
which
we're
is
all-
good.
As,
Right.
as long as we're aware of it.
So that would put us at $1,003,000. Let's say you got the 500,000.
Yeah, that'll, okay. Mhm. So you might want to factor that into your thinking.
Super.
All right?
Thank you, sir.
All right, we'll let you pedal more hardware. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Travel safe.
Ah, yes.
Okay. Next up is landfill seeking proposal. Sanford Kent and Associates.
I'm Lloyd Wood.
Lloyd, Chip City.
Yeah.
Bill Marcuson. Nice to meet you.
If you want to sit up your easel right
Another
there,
chip.
that way the
That's
camera
easier.
can pick it up. If you want to set your easel.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, why don't we
also-
do that?
How are you?
And just so you know a little more about us, let's say more ahead, I just made some quick copies on Friday. It's just a brief description of what Sanborn Head is in general, and then detailed resumes from Andy and myself. Yeah, the fifth copy there for you.
And the selectmen I forwarded a revised copy of the proposal on Friday to Karen. I don't know if that was circulated inside.
And yeah, that's, I think, what we have here, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Either that or it's in the signature folder. It's either there or in the signature folder, yeah.
Yep. Right. We're good. So,
So I don't know if you had some specific questions for us, or how you wanted this morning to go.
well, why don't you go ahead and introduce and explain what it is that you're proposing to do for us
Okay.
with respect to this. And I know Larry has been instrumental in getting you guys to provide the proposal, and is also, I'd say, our resident expert, to the extent that we have one,
Yeah.
on the issue with the
Sure
seepage.
extent.
So, what we're looking to do is get a handle on the impact of the seepage on the surrounding area, particularly as it relates to maybe into the groundwater. And can you walk us through how you propose for us to get from what we know now to maybe a little further down the road?
You can start off.
Sure, okay. Yeah, I mean, my understanding in talking to Larry is that Stantec has provided a proposal for a preliminary hydrogeo study of the seep area, and that primarily our kind of initial scope was to provide a second opinion review of the services that they proposed to carry out for you to conduct. So the scope of work that we provided to the Selectmen was intended to kind of do a background data review to understand the site and the issue at hand, and then provide a second opinion review of Stantec's proposal to see if it's appropriate and whether there's any other kind of work that could be done or changes in the scope to better understand what's happening at the site. So kind of that's a really kind of a simple kind of look at our scope, but essentially provide a couple of days of time to review background documents, understand the site geology and groundwater flow, understand which we've already started looking at some of the chemistry of the landfill and the groundwater, and then look at how we might want to move forward.
If you want to walk through the figure and just sort of show them
Sure.
what we, and this may be old news to you guys, but
So yeah, we took some of the previous annual groundwater reports. This one is from 2013. It's the most recent one I found with groundwater contours presented up, so understanding which way groundwater is flowing from the landfill. So these are the kind of dark blue groundwater lines showing groundwater flow from the landfill away towards the wetlands here. There's a number of monitoring wells, the green dots that I've highlighted. And I understand that this well, which is upgrading of the landfill, is no longer monitored by the current permit, and we have 4 or 5 downgrading groundwater wells that are still monitored. And that most recently the state has asked for some additional analysis to look at the PFAS issue. But the kind of suite of parameters here are pretty standard for landfill monitoring. So last week we spent some time looking at the chemistry from 2015 primarily, but some older data, because I saw there was kind of a bit of a sporadic monitoring at some points. You know, obviously the state has been reviewing reports and slowly cutting down on the amount of monitoring that was required. But ultimately, looking at the data, the extent of kind of contamination and certain arsenics a concern, but primarily localized to this area in groundwater. And then the blue dots are here representing the surface water features that are amongst at the site. So I understand there's a seep and several other surface water points that are monitored, and those appear to have slightly higher concentrations in general compared with groundwater. And so one of the kind of initial tasks that we want to understand here is what's causing the differences in groundwater chemistry in the surface water compared with the groundwater at the site, since it does appear to be fairly localized in groundwater, but we're seeing higher concentrations in those surface water features. So In talking with Larry, one of the concerns here is the underlying aquifer and the downgrading wetlands and being protected of those features. So we want to understand whether the groundwater chemistry is localized in the surface, or whether there's any kind of deeper groundwater flow, and whether there's concern for off-site migration. So we want to, as part of the understanding background, review geology, review construction of monitoring wells, and get a sense of how the groundwater is monitored and whether it's not screened, the depth of it. Understand whether the contamination is shallow or if there's any deep component, and look at how you might want to move forward in terms of additional investigation. And if you want to add anything to that, Chip.
I was going to say, yeah, probably it does look like most of the contamination in groundwater is localized right here. This SW1 location is where the so-called seep was, and then sometime after that was identified a well point, which is just a small well installed by hand, was put in there, and sure enough, the chemistry between those two is very similar. And also, you know, really the highest levels found anywhere in the site. And it seems the other surface water locations, SW3 and SW2, SW4, are a little farther away and have, generally speaking, less contamination. So, kind of one of the big questions is it really this localized in groundwater, or is it just because of where our wells are? That's what it appears to be, but somehow we're, you know, not catching it with these other wells. But it seems like we have pretty good coverage, and the fact that all of these have little or no impact certainly at first blush makes us think it's localized here. And I think typically in a situation like this, right, not all the time, but typically the groundwater is going to discharge in a fairly localized area. But we understand, we haven't been there yet, but hopefully we'll go there a little later today, that there is a lot of beaver dam activity, and that can change the surface water levels, and depending upon how high or low the surface water levels are, that's going to affect where the groundwater ends up discharging. So, whereas normally if there wasn't any beaver activity, we'd expect most of the plume to discharge pretty locally. It can get more complicated because of beaver dams or other features that man-made dams, if there were any, that could affect surface water levels. So the proposal from Stantec was to do some geophysics, which was basically going to help define where the zone of this contaminated groundwater was, and then put two monitoring wells in, presumably somewhere down gradient, to help define that plume better, or maybe define that it's not there, you know, that it is localized. Another thought we had too was maybe to extend, since you are concerned about how far down in the wetland complex this impact might go, is to do some additional surface water locations where we would get surface water elevations and also water chemistry to just track it directly. In other words, you know, this is where the highest concentrations are. Everything else seems to be going down in concentration. If we step out a little farther downstream, do we see those concentrations continuing to go down, or not? So that's just kind of some basics. So we haven't seen the site yet. We've looked at some of the material, but not all of it yet. So we still would have you know, a ways to go in terms of familiarizing ourselves with the site. But those are some initial thoughts.
Gentlemen, questions?
So let's just, the setup is that you're going to work in conjunction with Stantec, or this is an alternative to Stantec?
I guess our understanding was we're sort of critically reviewing what they've proposed to do, and really as part of that, kind of what they've already done, because it's hard to separate the two. At some level maybe say, yeah, we think what they're doing is great, or geez, you know, what they're doing is okay, but we add a little more or subtract a little, or maybe at the other end of the spectrum, no, we think they're way off base, and you know, and I don't think that's the case, but you should be looking down there, or you know, the problem's much bigger than it appears, or...
So you're going to be reviewing the data that they collect?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, really, the data that's already been collected right now. I think our intent is to try to get through this in the next month or so, pretty quickly. So then you can decide, okay, do you want to proceed ahead with what Stantec is doing, or do you want to change course, or what do you want to do?
Well, they had mentioned a lot of high-tech subsurface.
Yeah, that probably is the geophysics,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, I think they were proposing some sensing.
Yeah. Andrew has got a degree in geophysics, so he's our resident geophysicist. So I don't know if you want to just describe a little more about what that is, just to.
Sure. I mean, so essentially, it'd be using an electromagnetic method. Quite often with a landfill, especially when it's not lined, there'll be a plume that generates a signature and chemistry that can be detected with electromagnetic methods. So you don't have to disturb the subsurface, but you can take your instrument above ground and basically running a magnetic signal and sensing it with a detector. And then you take that information back to the office and interpret it in order to define the extent of the contamination in groundwater. And you would use that to then pinpoint where you would go and do your intrusive, your monitoring wells.
The way I think it works is because the plume has salts in it and metals, they react to the radar. So the radar, I think that's what it is, detects that presence of salt, of metal ions and so forth, and that'll be distinctive, presumably because the plume is different than the groundwater and the other waters that are coming in. So you should be.
Will that establish the depth? There was some
That's
question.
about all I know about it. That's it.
Sometimes you can do. I haven't looked at the details of the exact method they're planning to deploy yet. Depending on the type of geology and what's in groundwater in terms of the chemistry of the salts. Sometimes you can, although there's some more sophisticated analysis that will be done.
Usually it's more just
sort of defining, okay, is it here, is it still here? And
So it's not
using
going
that
to tell us whether it's down in the aquifer or it's just up in the.
Yeah, not as much so typically. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't believe what Stantec's proposed here is that type of investigation. I think it's literally just defining an area.
And part of actually in their drilling, they talk about drilling to depth, basically all the way to bedrock, or 50 foot is a max, and then really relying upon what they see as they go down to assess where they might put the screen for the well, and hence where they would look for groundwater contamination. And that's not that unusual to do, that type of make observations as you go. And okay, geez, we found this one zone that is rusty red, or if they're doing measurements with the conductivity meter as they drill, it seems to be more conductive, or a variety of things they could do.
So this is essentially a peer review.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Lloyd?
I have a couple of questions. First of all, thank you for your efforts. Is it safe to say that the cause of this issue here is not the result of current transfer station operations? For example, we're not dumping or getting rid of something, or we have a trailer of something leaking like that. Is that a fair question?
I mean, put it this way, I think I've seen something like about 300 landfills such as this in New Hampshire closed, and seeing this type of water quality impact is very typical for a lot of these smaller old municipal landfills that weren't lined, that operated from the 40s through to the 70s or 80s, were then capped. And actually, all things considered, this might be cleaner than most. So I don't think it's atypical, and hence we haven't been there to see the site yet. But I don't think you need to have an ongoing problem.
Well, the reason I asked that question is if there was something that we need to immediately.
Exactly.
Start going to any emergency. As far as the rate of severity, if a human touches this, are they going to get sick? Is it deadly to animals? Is it polluting the air? I'm not trying to minimize the effect, but do you understand my question?
Yeah, I do. and kind of going through things. First of all, New Hampshire, as most states in the federal government, they have pretty stringent standards for drinking water. And New Hampshire, by law, says that all groundwater has to be drinkable, or should be drinkable. So New Hampshire uses drinking water standards to assess groundwater. So that's really about as strict as you can get. And realizing all that, the only place that we see exceedances of drinking water standards, and jump in if I'm off, understand it, but it's basically right in this area. It's, all over here, these are all relatively clean. I guess whatever the problem is, it's very localized. And then zeroing in on these locations, you probably can't make out all these numbers. But for instance, you wouldn't want someone drinking the water that comes right out of the seep, because that is, in the case of arsenic, 30 times the drinking water standard. In the case of manganese, 5 times the drinking water standard. In the case of dioxin, it's now almost 20 times the drinking water standard. So that may seem high, but all those drinking water standards are based upon someone drinking 2 liters of water a day for 70 years, and then having some, frankly, relatively low risk of an impact. So again, not to diminish it, but broadly speaking, what you'd notice the most would be iron, because there's 100 parts per million iron, which is pretty high. And so you'd see that as rusty stuff, and it would look pretty gross.
And it would the taste would
Yeah,
be
you'd probably taste it, exactly.
significant, right?
So, and manganese also, to a certain extent, you'd see that as, if it was just manganese, it'd be black. If it was just iron, it'd be kind of rusty red. Together, it probably looks kind of like a brownish, cruddy stuff. So it certainly is nasty. If you tasted it, it would taste bad. Some of these numbers, and I don't have them all totally on the top of my head, but I think these numbers are above surface water standards for ecological receptors, that is, fish and various other creatures that live in the water. I'm not a biologist, so. But again, they seem to be very localized, because once you step out a ways, it doesn't seem to be all that bad. So probably the biggest risk would be if some kids went in there and swam, something like that, or if someone was catching fish from right there and eating it. That would probably be the biggest risk. I don't know if there are, again, this is just kind of a swampy area, or if it's a pond where people fish and catch and eat. In terms of air, typically VOCs, volatile organic compounds, are what we worry about, because they volatilize, kind of by definition. And you can see even at the hottest location, there's only 8 parts per billion total VOCs, so very low number. And I'm assuming you probably know what the specific compounds were. And they were all, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're all really low.
Yeah, well
it's
below.
made up of probably
Yeah.
7 or 8 different compounds
Yeah.
to make that number.
So in some instances, if you had groundwater with a lot of volatiles in it and it was going under a building, you'd worry about what we call vapor intrusion. But first of all, there's no buildings, and second of all, concentrations are low, so air impact is probably pretty much non-existent.
2 other questions.
Sure.
Has there been an estimated cost
For their work?
for their work?
Yeah, it's $4,900, right?
Yeah, yes.
And that's for
Yes.
future work, right?
That's for what they proposed, which is they're gonna visit the site and they're gonna do a detailed go-through of all the information and then compare it to the proposal for active work going forward and give us an opinion on it.
And the last question I have is, are there any local towns or businesses that have used your services close to Tufton
Yeah, we do a lot of work for the state of New Hampshire and for New Hampshire DOT. In fact, New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services is kind of my single biggest client. We do a lot of work for DOT towns. We do a lot of work for Lebanon, for Nashua, for Londonderry.
Did you do Sandwich?
No.
I thought I saw the name in here for their landfill.
I worked in the Sandwich landfill when I was at GZA and did a little bit of work, but that was 30 years ago.
You don't look that old, sir.
No. I am.
I'm satisfied, thank you.
Looking forward, you mentioned 300 plus landfills that you
Right.
have experience with. what's the mitigation? What do we do? Once we figure out what it is, what do we do?
A lot of times I mean, the state's wrestling with that right now, right? Because back in, a lot of the landfills were closed, in the 80s or 90s. In fact, we worked on a couple of landfills that have been closed for over 30 years now. And way back then, they said, well, we're going to monitor for 30 years. Oh my God, that's a long time. And by then, surely they'll be cleaned up, or we'll figure out a better way to do things. Anyways, it's been 30 years, and most of them haven't cleaned up, and no one's really found a magic bullet. So I think a lot of it is going to be continued monitoring at less and less frequency, right, hopefully. Of course, we find new contaminants like the perfluorinated compounds, which causes like a whole other cycle of having to look for them. But I think broadly speaking, it's just long-term monitoring and making sure that there are groundwater or surface water impacts, that no one's being affected by it. So groundwater management zone, to make sure no one's drinking the water. Unless you want to go through a big expense of, putting some sort of barrier in or some sort of pumping system in, or even worse, having someone come in and dig it all up and bring it to a lined landfill. It's just kind of a monitor and wait and see, and it'll slowly get better over time. But
Okay.
probably,
Well,
Andrew might be
yeah,
around
yeah.
for when it gets cleaned up, but I don't think I will be so.
And just thinking about the kind of, I guess that kind of focus on the groundwater piece. If this is more of a localized surface water, issue, then there may be something pretty small that you could do here, just to treat some of the metals that are coming out and make sure they're not going to be an impact to the degraded wetland areas.
I had a
But
question.
yeah.
Go ahead. Mike, you were on the committee that closed the landfill, right?
Yes.
Was that lined?
No.
And most of the landfills were. I mean, typically they were all gravel pits,
Right.
right?
Well, this luckily was a nice sand pit, so
Yeah.
it has very good filtration.
Right.
But the attenuation, which I thought would be 30 years, isn't working out too well.
And like I say, it's not the only location. Because what happens is you get the organic matter that's in there, right? All the food and other waste that went in there, and that's slowly decomposing over time because of the bacteria that are there. And that decomposition basically uses up the oxygen in the groundwater. So when that happens, iron and manganese and arsenic that are just in the soils and in the rocks become more soluble in that groundwater that has no oxygen in it. And that's mostly what we're seeing, right? We're not seeing a lot of VOCs. We're not seeing a lot of...
And in the absence of oxygen, this stuff breaks down much more slowly, correct?
Exactly, that too, yeah.
I'm all set.
All right. Any thoughts from you?
I'm impressed with the presentation and the information we got from these guys versus anything we've received before.
Larry?
I'm glad I called you.
Glad you did too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have here a contract to engage them for $4,900, and I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the 49.
I'll second.
All right.
Any little discussion about where we're coming up with the money?
Well, that is a question. Where do we have? And I don't have a current expense report to see where we have.
I can ask Diane if you'd like.
And I don't know where your budget stands this year.
There's probably some room in it.
Okay.
We're not there yet.
Is this gonna hit the 18 budget or?
This will hit this year.
Okay.
Right. So.
That's my understanding.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, our
Well,
plan would be, I think, to get this work done like
on the
before the end of the
strength
year,
that there's
next couple
probably
months.
money there, and I'm sure that we can.
But I'm sure we'll find it, I just was.
So.
All right, so I made the motion, we'll discuss where we're getting it from at another time.
We can stop and do that now, or we can specify it. I'm comfortable specifying it afterwards. to keep
I
it-
understand the motion's been seconded. Yes, there'll be some investigation to, as far as the dollars, but this is important.
It is. It's gonna get us some answers, and
We've already, quite frankly, we've already saved a lot of money with some of these people here who've
and
put a lot of hours in.
the
Thank
intent
you.
of this work is to get us some answers so that we know in time for the 2019 budget cycle what the next step is gonna be and what the cost is gonna be, so we can move forward and not just kick it down the road a year. And gentlemen, I thank you for coming in and
you.
making the presentation.
Nice drive up.
Nice to meet you. How far did you
Yeah, we
guys
are
have
gonna
to
try
drive?
to
I'm from
vote.
Durham.
Right.
Okay.
When I was a kid, my parents had a place in Moltenboro.
Yep, yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Whereabouts?
Now you can give us.
Durham Point Road, about 2 miles from campus, 2 or 3 miles from UNH.
I was there with that monkey one. How rough.
Oh, no kidding, that was funny.
Like it's a single signature.
Wow.
One
And
signature, yeah.
I was saying, although it's a ways away from here, when I was a kid, back in the 60s and 70s, my family had a place in Moltenboro on Winnipesaukee, so.
Their landfill. They cleaned it up. You know, cost big money,
I can do that.
but in the long run, I think they were pretty wise.
Well, and that's the thing, it's do you want to spend like $1 million up front, or do you want to spend $10, $20, or $30,000 a year, kind of,
Yeah.
who knows how long?
Right.
That's a tough decision.
In 30 years, we're 4.
And my guess is if you get enough significant issues coming up, then you bite the bullet and say, you go for the big money to
Yes.
to mine it.
Yeah.
But
That's a tough
that's a
decision.
huge task.
Yeah, it is, it is.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Travel safe now.
All right. Next, we have Steve and Larry. Come on down, gentlemen. We'll talk about 19 Brook.
So Larry's gonna go out to the landfill.
Oh, you're going to the landfill?
Yeah.
Yep, all right.
Don't forget your paper.
Forget my head if I didn't have it.
And Larry,
Yeah,
thank you for all the
Sure.
work you put into
Sure.
finding these guys and bringing them to the town.
okay, well,
Okay,
I feel much safer in their hands.
How you doing?
Okay. So there's been interest in the Conservation Commission probably all along to revisit the baseline study. Are you familiar with the original baseline study that was conducted for 1900?
I'm not intimately familiar with it. I know we did one, but can you give us a quick overview?
Okay. So I guess, I actually wasn't in town in those days, but I was here on weekends taking care of my dad. I always used to read the paper. And it was definitely a hot issue in those days. We're talking, probably starting in 2007, going through 2009. And then Wolfboro proposed there's rapid infiltration basin up here. And this is the major portion of 19 Mill Brook. And this is a major tributary that goes this way. It provides about half of the flow. And the other half pretty much comes from this way, which is downslope and down gradient from rapid infiltration basin. And they proposed at the time that this water would filter down through this sand hillside here, and then actually bubble up under the stream. I remember reading this in the paper and thinking, you have streams because it's sitting on top of something impermeable. That's why the water comes out there and starts flowing. And how did they expect this drainage wanted to get under this and then come up in the stream? Sure enough, it came out. While the baseline study was underway, they decided to test it at full capacity at the worst time of year, and it blew up.
Mm-hmm.
Surprise, surprise. So, and it came out basically on this slope around like this. This is where they, this is kind of the town boundary, and this is where they purchased that last piece.
5 acres of land, yeah.
So the study had 4 locations where they collected information. One above, right about in this area. If you've been out there beyond where the power line crosses, 19 Mill Brook. And that was kind of a control, you know, before anything from this could affect it. And then right down below slope, where the major effects took place, and then below the little pond out here, and then about another quarter-mile down the stream at this location right here, where it also had the effects of the feeder coming in. That's as far as they looked for anything. And looking at other information available to us, Fran Lashley has a sample point out here in 19 Mile Bay that he's been doing for almost 20 years. So there's a long-term data set for there that I haven't looked at. My experience is a lot of dilution that goes on once you go out a little way in the lake, and it's pretty hard to pick up the effect you might get from here.
Well, his was based on or premised on the PAC 2000 issue. I think that's how that started, when PAC 2000 had their...
I think Fran's been doing this before that.
He may have been.
He was,
yeah, but
I think he's one of the original lake samplers
Yes.
when the program got started.
But he is right.
But he
there
was
a lot of
affected by
concern
that,
down there.
yeah. At least as well. And the other thing I know is that if you're gonna dump something bad into something, a wetland is about the best place to do it. There's a lot of mitigation that goes on in wetlands, and 19 Mile Brook, really from the pond down, is almost a continuous wetland. So that's kind of background. Based on what you said at the Island Association, and you know, other things, other conversations going on, and it's about 10 years since the baseline study was done. I contacted Norman Dew Associates that did the original one and said, what would it cost to do a new, you know, do the whole thing over? And that's probably the best way you could come up with any kind of conclusion as to whether the RIB is affecting 19 Mile Brook or even Winnipesaukee. And, okay, so they gave me a proposal. Okay. That's my copy. And this is actually the product of the glossier version of this one, what they produce. And the other thing I was able to discover that originally there was an original $8,000 proposal, which morphed into about a $15,000 recommended proposal, and then it just got deeper after that about what to do, how often, and where. And I think we probably spent about $40,000 all told to get this final document. And then if you look at their proposal, they're proposing $45,000 to basically revisit the thing. I think there are options. One is, and a couple of things in the proposal. An added job would be reviewing all the information that's available, and there's a lot.
before you get going, this is going to be premised upon, did they do the original baseline study?
Yes.
Okay, so they're going to take that information and then take new information and see what has happened.
Yeah, and
Okay.
interpret it.
Right, right, okay.
And we were very happy with the original proposal and advice they gave us afterwards. You know, we, as things started happening at the RID, we said, you know, what does this mean? What does that mean? And in some cases, they provided free information. I mean, they didn't bill us, but we did. I think we spent probably approximately $5,000 having some additional survey work and some opinions done a couple of years after that. but we were always very happy with the results, and I was around in those days. So, an added responsibility in their proposal is to look at all the existing data, and there's a lot of that. And then, and they propose not to do flow studies because that's part of the information that's readily available. Basically, anything they pump into that RIV comes out at 19 output in terms of volume. And the flow studies that Wolfboro has done shows that. So it would be probably wasted money to look at flow. I think the real value is looking at microinvertebrates and fish. I think that's probably the gold part of this proposal. Generally, if you're doing something bad, particularly stuff that's going to affect us, that's the canary in the coal mine. And you can make pretty good interpretation about what's going on based on what critters are no longer there, or what kind of bacteria are spotted there. It can give you a lot of information in my experience. I think we have a little room. They did a wildlife analysis before. I don't see that it's valuable. I don't think water quality is going to show up there, and particularly not the way you do it. They just basically went down the properties there and tried to determine what kind of wildlife was in the area. Same thing with endangered species. They did a little endangered species.
That's only $4,100 of the $45,000.
Yeah.
And it appears as though, what was it, 2007 they did the first report?
And this was done through 2008.
Yeah, I was a selectman in 2006 and was hoping that an effort would be made, and I guess this is the effort that was made. But let's say it ran through 2008. So, and when did their system fail? Wolfboro system?
In 2009.
2009.
That's when he started using it.
And it failed immediately?
Right, immediately.
So
it was actually, the first reported breakout was by a Normandy employee who was out there collecting information.
So let's assume that this new system that they think is magical is not going to fail immediately. I think we have to presume that we're going to have to spend $45,000 a year to continue this, because just doing a baseline study is good. I mean, it's an important first step, but it doesn't give you any information 2 years from now or 3 years from now. So we don't have any real empirical evidence of what is happening to the aquatics, let's say, because they were only in operation for a short period of time. So we're going to have to figure that the expenses are going to go forward.
When it comes to the expenses, are there any grants available, or is there any money available under the watershed project?
Once the watershed project is complete, if this is recognized as an important thing to do, then there could be grant money available. Of course, you also understand that kind of starting in Washington, grant money is becoming less available as a future trend.
And if we're going to do this next year, it's a capital improvement project, right?
I would say so, yeah.
Well, I'm wondering if, I mean, we really need to start hammering a little harder here. Right? If we're going to, let's say we have to do this every 3 years, or let's say every 3 years.
Yep.
Then you're talking about $150,000, $200,000 over time.
Yes.
Added to our budget. You know, why are we paying for it? I mean, we're not creating this.
That was my next question.
I mean, we need to start hammering a little harder on Wolfboro. I mean, if they have money enough to redo this project, which failed the last time, and the last project they did failed, our assumption has to be that there's a good possibility that this project will fail, and then what do we do? And then we're on the hook.
I have some of these same feelings, but it seemed at an impasse. They have the evidence that says they're meeting the conditions of that permit. We don't have any evidence that we're being damaged. I think if you really want to go that way, this provides the evidence.
We're all right. I mean, I don't think there's any way around doing this.
Once you do this one after 10 years review, then you might have the evidence to say, this isn't our fault, somebody else will pay for it. But without that evidence, I don't know how you can throw that gauntlet out there.
Well, no, you have to. I mean, you have to. Just
Yes.
it's kind of a basic premise. If you know that your neighbor is going to build a shopping center on an
Yes.
unreasonable lot, and you don't say anything for 10 years, well, you've slept on your rights. When the occurrence happens, that's when you have to say something.
Correct.
And maybe you don't get anywhere the first year or 2 or 3 or 4. But if something bad happens, at least you've put your marker in the ground that said, okay, we told you at the beginning that if you have a problem with this is how we're going to remedy it. I mean, obviously, we can't get damages if there's no damage, which is, to your point, which is correct. But if we don't take a position, then I think that we may have not been judicious about exercising our rights as a municipality.
Correct.
So, I mean, I don't know why Wolfboro wouldn't agree to participate in the monitoring. They were, or at least Dave Ford in his pugnacious way was very resistant to it. I mean, you had mentioned grant money. You know, it's like, all right, you know, they need to participate. It's not, I don't know how we would get grant money without Wolfboro's participation. And they're creating the issue.
I think they might. Dave had already agreed to participate in pharmaceuticals and personal care items.
Which is different than this.
Yeah, that's not even addressed.
Well, I think that actually has greater risk to Wolfboro as a municipality as creating a problem that they didn't need to look at. You know, now they agreed to look at it, and by golly, it's a problem. I think there's. If I was a betting guy, I don't think this resurvey is going to show that there are significant effects on 19 Mile Brook other than flow during low flow periods. It's just my guess, and I'm not qualified.
I would just as soon guess that if there's I mean, they have a hospital, a regional hospital down there. They have a prep school, they have a high school, they have many businesses. My guess is problems tend to get pumped into Tuftonboro.
I think those problems are probably there, but they're not going to surface through this analysis.
We won't know about it through this because they're not addressing those issues.
It's a new frontier doing this kind of science.
The purpose of this study is the same reason why we have auditors go over our books. This is just an environmental audit.
Yeah, that's in a way, yeah.
Yep.
I think if you were looking for compensation and participation, you could look at this as an investment. And I'm not trying to talk you into it. I have mixed feelings on this. The value of $45,000. And one side of me says, the only way we're going to find out is to do it.
Well, I don't know that they're the only people in the state that do this sort of thing either. And maybe we haven't given them the parameters that, I mean, they mentioned the Wolfboro Rapid Infiltration Project. But it's municipal waste that we're talking about here. It's not as if we're trying to figure out what happened to the fish in Winnipesaukee because there are motorboats. I mean, this is a specific project that's inspecting a specific wetland.
we can go back to them with a different kind of proposal. We can float a proposal and send it
Well,
around.
you went back to Normanville because they did the original one.
Right.
And we were happy with the result that we got from them on the original.
We should have them.
And they have been involved, giving us advice in the last 10 years.
And I realize, and I'm a lay person when it comes to this, but when you have 7 acres of land which is used to 40 inches of rain per year, and now you're gonna put 350 to 600,000 gallons of water on that land, that's a significant difference.
Yep.
I mean, it's like dumping Russ Pond up there every year. I mean, it's a lot of water. And I don't know what effect that's gonna have on the wetland. You know, or the lake for that matter. So maybe we should have them in. I mean, chat them up. I'm not gonna buy $45,000 worth of product until I see the guy.
I asked them if they would come up and speak to us, and they said they would.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's.
Do it on voting day?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, you know, I gave you some of my speculation about how we could change this a little bit.
Right.
I would not try to do that without some good advice.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's like this guy that came in today. I mean, I think having a peer review of some study that we're doing is absolutely what we should do. We need to have a lot of eyes on this thing before we make decisions or spend big money.
And actually, they were the ones that gave us advice to talk to them.
Yeah.
Yep.
We approached them for their second opinion, and they said they don't really deal with municipal waste.
Yeah.
They don't have that kind of expertise.
Well, that shows you intellectual integrity on their part, rather than say, yeah, and then they go find a second party, they're going, hey, wait a minute, so.
Yeah, and we haven't even gotten copies of their plans. We don't have anything. I mean, it's in, you know, whatever they may say in Wolfburg, the project is in Tuftonboro for all intents and purposes. So I don't know, do you have a copy of their permit for this? Rapid inflation or?
The fix?
Is it a fix or is it a rebuild or what?
Oh, right, with you. This is the original proposal from 2007.
Well, we don't have anything for 2018.
Well, we have the proposal for the fix, before they had this property on what they could control.
Yeah.
And that was considered to be a test, which passed. You see, that was successful. We have all that. We have a box of stuff in our office, and they're probably this thick. That's why
take a look at it.
a key item in their proposal is the review of what's out there available. They took a look, assuming it would help them put this proposal together, and said, whoa, we're talking a lot of money just to look through all of this stuff.
So what they saw from their look is it's gonna,
4,700 bucks.
they're gonna put a lot of time into reviewing this stuff before they. Sure.
From my experience, the most important thing here, and I have a little, my career with the Forest Service, I had municipal watersheds and a lot of waste disposal, projects like this, proposals on lands that I was responsible for managing. So I took a lot of training in this stuff just to know it better. That's as far as my knowledge goes, and it's probably 10 years out of date. But when I looked at what was done before and I looked at what can be done, the potential I see there is to measure the ecosystem that's out there, remeasure it, and say, what is the change? And then usually that change can be interpreted. That's because of this is being injected into the stream, or that is. And it goes right down to looking for deformities in the quivers that occupy the water. That really bad stuff tends to show up that way long before it shows up on us. But if you want to do an exhaustive study about what the effects could be, that would really be expensive. And that's basically, I think, what we were looking at with the geological survey proposal for pharmaceutical personal care items. The personal care item field is a place where companies that sell stuff are putting things in products that they have no idea what the effect is. They're just making good money doing it. And we are, I don't want to know about that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff going into our
So
ecosystem that way.
this area here is encompassed in your wetland, in your base, you're doing a survey of the aquifers. I remember seeing a map with the aquifers laid out on it.
Yeah.
And that's included in your,
There is an aquifer underneath this, but there's nothing proposed and there was no information on that. And that aquifer goes under Muir Lake. That's been an item of discussion with
right,
Muir Lake people, or the possible joining of waters through this extensive wetland here. There's plenty to look at if you want to try to see around all the different corners. If you wanted to, and I think there is an actual minimalist approach, and that is just to look at the critters in the stream and wetland and down at this station down here. That would be, and I don't have any idea what that would cost, but I would guess it'd be under $20,000.
Well, I think if we can get Norman to come next Tuesday, when we're there all day, if they can come and spend some time with us and have a good discussion, it will help us to understand the most appropriate approach to get information to update what we already know. Whether it's replicating what was done 10 years ago, or it's selectively going into areas that are going to give us the best tell, and let's say the answer is this is 46,000, okay? But let's say they say, well, if we do it just this, and this, it won't give you all the information, but it'll give you the key indicators, and it's $36,000. So then we say, okay, so for a reduction of $10,000, if that's the cost, we're getting less information, but maybe the key indicators, but maybe the answer is you really go for the full piece. I mean,
I think they would be willing to say stuff like that, but they won't leave saying that's a proposal. They want to go back and look it over and then say something.
I'm perfectly comfortable having an ongoing conversation over a period of time. Obviously, if we want to get something going for next year, we have a few months between now and when we go to town meeting that we've got to solidify the dollar impact and where we're going to put it in what we bring to the town. But I would much rather have a proposal, have a conversation, look at some options after that, maybe 2 or 3 times, and until we're comfortable that what we're bringing to the voters is the right thing to move our knowledge forward. Not unlike what we're doing with the breakout of the landfill. Got some information there. We know that there are some things that need to be investigated. Get some proposals, get somebody to look at some stuff, and we find the best way forward. And it may be that an exact replication of what they did 10 years ago is the right way. It may be some subset or some subset of what was there and some things that we didn't look at that will be indicators. I don't know. But these guys have done a fair amount of this. This is what they do.
Yeah.
Right?
I think, yeah, this is more looking at I'm going to say natural resources, that's a broad spectrum, and providing opinions, reports, environmental analysis, that's more what they do than anything else.
And the flow report you mentioned, that Wolfboro had done, was that at the mouth of 19 Mile Brook, or where was that? Do you know?
I think they did it at those 4 locations.
Okay.
And what I think what they do is they find a point where they can kind of measure bank to bank with the spaces, and then they just measure whatever the water level is periodically. And it's very subjective. They did it once a month for like 4 or 5 months, and it all depends on how hard it was raining, how many days it rained, you know, and things like that. I don't think that is valuable information, just in my opinion, and it's well replicated because Wolfboro had weirs set up down here and at the breakouts. Plus, they knew what they were pumping in, and a pretty good correlation that whatever they pumped in came out. You know, and fairly quickly. So that data is all there.
And is that, I mean, do we have to file a 91A every time we want something out of Wolfboro, or do you have some relationship with the Conservation Commission down there?
I have a relationship with the Conservation Commission, but this is not something they want to get involved in.
Right, because it's not in Wolfboro, it's in Tuftonboro. Yeah.
And I think I have a good working relationship with Dave Ford. He's always levels with me when I talk to him. I feel like I can talk to one of the selectmen.
Yeah, have you had any resistance to giving you information when you've asked for it?
No.
So you have a copy of that flow report? Or you just reviewed it? How'd that happen?
We have some of it in there.
But they only did that intermittently over a few months' time? It wasn't like...
No, they did it for quite a while.
Yeah.
They're not doing it now, and they haven't done it. Basically, they did it when things changed. So the changes that took place is they went from the maximum way down to a much smaller amount and built it up a little bit. And they were monitoring flow all of this time, trying to figure out what it could take, how much they could put in without creating side slope damage. In the case of erosion and sand movement. And when they came up with that number, then they went into the study of the area that they controlled, repiping that and then putting it back in the ground. And they continued to study it through that. And then once that study was over, I think they stopped their flow study in the stream itself. But at that point, it was pretty well established. You could predict what the flow was based on whatever they were putting in. And then from there, it was just natural flow, which varies considerably. Like Dave was telling me that in the summer, in this branch of 19 Mile Brook, they're providing 60 to 70% of the flow. And then in the winter, the percentage goes much lower because there's a lot more natural flow going on. All that information's available. It's not available in a way that you could just jump into the database or start flipping pages and have a really good understanding. It takes a little bit of time to assemble the information if you want to do, depending on what kind of analysis you want to make. I don't think flow is the information that's going to tell us much. What's going to tell us is what kind of changes have occurred in the biota in the stream. And that's where the gold is in this mine.
So are we gonna see you Tuesday at voting?
Are we going to what?
See you at Tuesday at voting?
Yeah.
When we meet with these people, you'll be back?
Oh, I can try.
Okay.
I'll give them a call as soon as I get home.
Yeah.
See if I can arrange that. If not, we'll have
We
to-
can do it at another meeting, but Tuesday's a great
yeah,
Works,
opportunity.
certainly works for us.
We've got plenty of time, and
Yeah.
if it can work into their schedule, that would be great.
We'll see what I can do.
Well, thank you.
All right,
Great.
thanks, Steve.
All right.
Do you have an extra copy of that right now?
Here's the full, got everything in it.
So we can do conservation's budget now that you know, or this will probably be separate.
No, I don't know.
Oh,
This
okay.
would be, we'd have to do a warrant article on this, I think.
Yes, yeah,
So this
Yeah,
isn't
that
gonna be
would
part
be-
of that.
Do you have other questions for me? Well, we can talk about that later. Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So, yeah, oh, knowing that, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so we can plan for both maybe Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
We have Tyler Phillips.
Yes.
on there.
I don't
He's
know.
Mr. Phillips.
He's sitting out there patiently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. It's been a while. Nice to see you again.
Likewise.
Hey,
Great.
So you survived the first winter storm?
Yes, was that what it was? You mean that spit that we got yesterday?
A lot of trees down. Down.
Yeah, there were.
Oh. Yeah, I survived it by watching the game last night.
So
Yes.
you're in a good mood, right, champ?
Oh, I hope you all are.
Yes.
Oh, man.
No, that was nice icing on the cake, wasn't it?
Oh, boy. Yeah, but I don't think it was all that unexpected.
It
I
wasn't unexpected to me.
I think it was fever going and just, I don't think LA did much to assuage that. So we go from some serious and weighty issues, I'm sure, to something that is far less of that. But I have, I put the subject down, administration, because I have had, I don't know how this whole system works in terms of roads. In terms of roads, and I understand there's been some work toward evaluating roads, and I think that's terrific. I was after that for many, many years on the budget committee, and I never understood how we could do $188,000 year after year when asphalt was going up, but we seem to. And now I gather there is a good review process in place, and I'm happy for that. My reason for being here this morning is fairly simple. There is this road here, Windleblow Road, has been a town road for some time, since Nelson Newcomb petitioned for that, and we've all been beneficiaries of that. We have a camp that was built by my grandfather in 1907, and there was no road in those days. The building material was brought in by barge, by horse-drawn barge, or horse, whatever, gondola, I guess we could call it.
They had horses that.
On a treadmill, that's
Treadmill,
right,
yep.
that's right, that's right.
I remember pictures of them.
landed
I'm not
and-
that old.
Well, I'm not either, but getting there. But here's the situation. The Windleblow Road portion, this simple map shows you, here's Tuftonboro Neck Road, here's Windleblow, and then there's a large apron here for the condominiums that are there.
Yeah.
And then there's a road up here which goes to other camps, and then a Barbara Fall Road which goes on through. So I guess the question I have is the original paving, which was done here, has broken down very significantly in one area. It makes me think that maybe originally it was not done as part of this project, but rather the project stopped at a certain point. And so I would like to request that in your reviews, if we might, put in an examination of this portion. The pavement is pretty much gone.
It was just there. That's what we got. And that's been chucked. You're down to dirt. And this stuff, where you do come back to fairly firm stuff, is very poor for alignment and for tires and everything else. It's not a large section. It's probably 30 feet, 50 feet maybe. And so I would just like to like to put in a request to refresh that portion where where it's all broken down, because it serves 13 camps on this road. It serves, I'm not sure how many condos here, in terms of they will be turning in, going across it and turning down to there. We have both, ourselves and the condo folks, have put in and paid for their own driveways, so that's not an issue here. But it's the approach which really needs to be taken care of. It may be that, in looking at it, you may be able to see that it can be paved over just the holes, and just fill the holes that are there, which right now we're going like this. You have to bring your car. As a matter of fact, when I was coming back 2 years ago, I stopped. It was about this time of year, the early snowfall, and I skidded right down. There's a slight lessening of grade at that point, and skid like this and like that, and got off the road, and somebody found it. But this is the area which needs attention. I don't think it's a serious full road issue by any means. As a matter of fact, this part of the road and the part that has been paid for by ourselves is in good shape. So it's really just a small section in here.
Okay.
So the town road ends at that intersection? Is that what you're saying?
It ends right here at the beginning, yes. I think at that point, I believe. Yeah.
So Barber Pole Road isn't paved?
No. Barber Pole is paved, yes,
Oh,
but
it
it's
is.
paved by the
But it's a private
others.
road, so it's paved by the people that.
The whole thing's paved except for one section's broken up.
Right, and it's just a matter, it had been paved by the town a long time ago, I think before the last pavement of Newcomb, but it's just, for some reason, was ignored and needs to be attended to. And now rocks are starting to poke through, there's nothing new here really, but just, that's the situation there. And I think we've got, these, if other folks are paying what I'm paying for our camp, it's about $10,000 a year for their taxes, so for property taxes. So I think they have the feeling that they ought to be served, and
Absolutely.
So
Sure.
that's where we are.
All right. Well,
Tell me a little, how do you guys work on this? Do you wait until after the winter and then take a look in the spring? Is that
Well,
what
not
you
gonna
do?
pave during the winter.
Pardon?
It won't get paved during. the
No.
winter, but that's
Do you do the evaluation in the spring? Is that it?
No, we're meeting with those people when?
well,
I think it's.
we contracted with the Lakes Region Planning Commission to do a survey of all of our paved roads this year, and this is they evaluate the pavement at short intervals down all the roads for a number of different attributes, and tabulate this information and then put it into a state formula and database that allows them, the formula can age the pavement based upon current condition and traffic and other factors. So basically you can take existing condition, push a button, say what's it going to look like in a year, 2 years, that sort of thing. And the approach also allows them to grade it. Here's very poor, here's not so bad, here's good.
Yeah.
And to look at it graphically. So we ought to be able to spread a map out here on the table that has all the town roads on it.
Yeah.
And I've seen these where different colors for the different conditions of the road,
Sure.
which will help us establish where we ought to be paving based upon
Priority.
upon this objective look,
Yeah.
as well as back to your statement earlier that year after year after year we spend the same amount to do paving. We know that the cost of asphalt goes up. In the last few years it's gone down a little bit, but it's now on the rise again. But how do we plan going forward so that what we're paving helps us get everything to a certain level of quality on
Sure.
the town roads, and to then be maintaining them going forward?
Yeah.
I'm as interested as the next guy in spending the appropriate amount on roads. We have people that stand up at town meeting and say, we ought to double the paving budget this year. We can do that, but if we double it this year, do we double it next year and thereafter? Or what we're trying to do with the study and then the database going forward is to take an appropriate approach to doing it. So maybe we need to be spending 30% more than we have been, and we bump it up, and then on a consistent basis going forward address those issues. So hopefully, when we get the report out on the study, which may be as early as the end of the week, this piece of pavement will come up in there as being in poor condition, and will help us.
And of course, they may be looking at, you all may be looking at whole roads.
Yes.
That road's been dirt for years and years and years, and it's gonna be dirt because there's less use or whatever. But this is a patch.
Mhm.
This is not, this could almost be pocket change, I think. I don't think this is a big deal.
Yeah.
But it is something that does, it's the nexus of a lot of year-round condo folks, people who have mostly summer camps, I would say, and then people who come in here from the Barbara Pole, but it's off on has several different takeoffs from that road there. But this is so someone might say, well, gee, Windleborough Road looks pretty good. Yeah, it does. It's from Tuftonboro Neck Road. But once you get inside and you get to this funny place, it's really pretty bad. And people are climbing up on the sides of the road and they're going like this. That's ridiculous. You know?
Our road agent has identified a number of situations just like this. You go into Shirley Way from Campbell Road, and
Yeah.
it's exactly what you're talking
We're
about.
not doing Shirley Way, I told you that.
Yes.
Going back in reverse or what?
No, I bought a house there.
Oh, yeah, I know that. Yeah. Well, you know,
The
in fact,
other thing about this study is traffic. So we may repair Windblow Road or pave the whole thing, but it may not get paved again for 15 years. 'Cause
yeah, and it won't need to be. This road, the paving that was done, now that's got to be, I don't know the number right hand, but it could be 18 to 20 years ago when Nelson Newcomb was here, and he was sort of the spark plug in back of this. Yeah, they did a darn good job. There's no breakdown. And as a matter of fact, the road agent has tarred places where it's opened up a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, tarred those cracks. By the way, I tried to reach him for 2 weeks. He must be awful busy. I didn't know whether I should go to him to sort of bring this up or not, but he never got back to me, so.
Okay. Well, it's certainly always not inappropriate to contact the road agent.
Yeah, yeah.
But always feel free to get a hold of Karen here in the office.
Yeah.
She has a better connection with Jim.
No, she
than
gave
most of us.
me his phone number. I put, I think 7 calls through in 2 weeks, and I actually went out to his office out there. There was no one there, but somebody I did get through to once said, "Oh yes, I saw him yesterday. I gave him your message." But
What's interesting is Lakes Region Planning, this is the second study. 2 years ago, they did the culverts.
oh,
And this board said, let's do the culverts first. What good is it just paving over them?
sure,
You know,
sure.
And we're also got 2 bridges. We did Sodom Road Bridge. It was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
That's
What
good.
rather interesting is, the selectmen, the budget committee, the CIP, and town meeting, every year in the last 2 or 3 years have said, hey, Jim, I think we need to invest more in our arteries.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You were part of that.
Sure, sure. I can remember being after it and just saying, you know, I'm not talking about our state roads, that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about our local roads. Why do we just keep investing the same amount of money in there? And then I shut up. And the next meeting I went to, there was a gentleman, an older gentleman, who got up and was quite fevered in his questioning about the magic 188 number. But at least it's getting some good, I think, some good progress. That's great. Do you need anything formal at all from me to
It's in the minutes.
go further?
Nope.
Or no? Okay, good. All right, you don't need this little sketch.
No.
I'm going to put it up on the sign.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tyler.
Great to see you guys.
Likewise.
Right.
Travel safe.
Right. Thank you.
All right. So you want to get Diane, and we'll get this done and
I leave the room when everybody stops talking.
I know, I would have hit the button, but
That's all right. Silence is great.
yeah,
5 minutes.
take a little pause.
Why, would you like me to pause this?
No, I don't think.
Okay.
If you pause it, then somebody will say, "Oh, he's editing the tape."
I
Or the
don't,
music of the papers flipping.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Little interlude. So, okay.
For my sponsor here.
Are you ready, Diane?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready when you're ready.
So, our next task is setting a tax rate for 2018.
Drum roll.
Drum roll, yeah. Based upon obligations that we have, we have a total of $7,242,734 that we have to cover for municipal, county, and
Yes.
education. And
That's a 9.3% increase over last year's.
as we look at the unadjusted tax rate, the total tax rate with no adjustment would be $11.44. And last year it was $10.77.
Right. It's a 67-cent increase.
Yep.
48 cents of that is town.
That's a 9.3% increase.
Municipal.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the current use or current year rate with old assessment? 1146. What's that, Tom and Diane? I've got this 1144, and then I've got this 1146. Does this mean something?
I guess what that would say is if we were using last year's assessment rather than this year's assessment, that's what the taxes would be.
Because local education and municipality are the only two that changed. That's the
They
2
went up.
cents.
Mhm.
Yep, those went up.
Yeah.
County and state aid went slightly down.
Mhm.
All right. So we got 10.
So we have the opportunity to take some of the undesignated fund balance and apply it
Right.
against the obligation to reduce the tax rate. And our current undesignated fund balance is,
Right here.
$1,112,710.
Where are we? 120.
So that's 8.9%, which is
Right in the middle.
right in the middle of the recommended guidelines between 5 and 17%.
Is that 8.9?
8.9%, yeah.
Okay.
So, any thought, gentlemen?
Well, I'm not a great fan of holding on to money. There's lots of taxable real estate in this town. So I mean, I'd like to see us use at least $100,000 for a reduction in taxes. Although I had 250,000 would put us at a more
If you
reasonable
went,
tax
if you went
increase.
with the 250, what would that work out to as a tax rate?
You want to try it?
Sure,
Yes, please.
try that. Who's got the calculator?
Right here.
It brings it to $11.18.
1118.
Without Lower Beach Pond.
Right.
An increase of 41 cents.
Right.
That's with a reduction of 100,000.
250.
Oh, you're 250, okay.
Right.
Lloyd's 250.
Lloyd. I was playing Lloyd. He's,
Well, it's tax dollars sitting there.
And that would leave us with
800 and,
850, something like that.
yeah,
And,
plus whatever we do for this year.
yeah, yeah.
I think we're fine there. I was trying to figure out the percentage of increase.
Yeah.
About 7%.
Put that in your head.
Yeah.
7%.
It's about that, yeah,
Is it?
it's around there.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we use $250,000 of the undesignated fund balance to reduce taxes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Perfect. Make it so.
All right, 250 is.
Thank you.
So that leaves it at 7% remainder,
About 7%
it's about.
of our obligation in undesignated fund balance.
But we also did a big project last year, the bridge.
Well, part of the increase is the school, and there was one part of the school that went up.
Yeah,
So that's the total taxes went up
Right.
7%.
right.
So the undesignated fund balance after the $250,000 applied comes to $862,710
Right.
balance.
Right.
Yeah, local education went up 40 cents.
Yeah.
Another example where the state just passes on retirement and school costs to us.
But that's no surprise.
Nope.
That's a continuation of what's
That's my harangue for today.
what's going on, yeah. So that is what it is. So
So that leaves your tax rate at 1118
the tax rate will be 1118.
without considering Lower Beach Pond.
Lower Beach Pond really is,
Insignificant.
it only affects a small number of
Right.
taxpayers that are in the Lower Beach Pond District. And the total, the impact on them,
Looks like it went
they will
up.
pay 87 cents more. And that is paying for their new dam.
Yeah, that was over $1 million.
Okay.
Did a nice job too.
Yep, they did. All right. Move on to the signature file. We have a services contract with Robertson Green PLLC, who are our financial auditors, to audit the books for us for, this is for the current year's for the year ending 2018. And this is for a total fee of $10,500.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased with this firm, their accuracy, and I know when I've asked questions, I have got appropriate answers. The other thing is that this firm has their work done before town meeting. Remember, it used to be, there was a
Right.
disclaimer.
Right.
The only thing is, so I have no complaints of re-upping with them. The only thing is, sometimes changing auditors is like changing locks on your door. You should do it every 5 or 6 or 10 years or whatever.
How often or how long have these guys been doing it?
That is a question. I don't know.
I think for at least 6 years, but I'd have to find that out. I just bring that up to be vigilant.
Yeah.
I can ask Diane if you want.
And we have to bring the treasurer into the discussion too, I think, if we're gonna change.
Yeah.
auditors.
But I'm not
I think you
suggesting.
make a good point, and I don't want to kick the can down the road, but at the end of,
There it goes.
Well, at the end of October, when we're looking at work that will begin in about another month,
Yeah.
I think for this year, we would be getting started really late to look at
So I'll
alternatives.
move it. That's
So,
all. You sign that.
I think that's a,
I'll move it.
that's a good thing to look at, and the time to start is probably in April.
Yeah.
Soliciting proposals for 2019. All right, so you
Move to accept
moved
the
it?
proposal.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There you go. All right. Now, we have a letter of thanks to the McGurk Fence Company.
We already voted on
Which we did, yep. Letter of congratulations to Ralph Boussier for his selection and receipt of Grain Citizen of the Year.
Yep.
We have a letter to Michael Carlton regarding his application for his intent to excavate. The planning board consulted with planning board counsel about the issue, which is grandfathering, and the council looked at the statute and at the town ordinance and at the approach that we've taken as a town over the last several years, and offered the opinion that it could not be grandfathered. So he met with the planning board at our last meeting, and he understands what needs to happen in order to get permitted, do a site plan, that sort of thing. I think he's ready to start that process going forward. And an advantage to somebody with an existing pit that has not been active, that can't be grandfathered to continue to excavate, is that any of our grandfathered pits, you can only continue to excavate within the area that's previously been opened. So you get a permit, go through the process of having a site plan review and all of that, and then you can excavate to the full extent that the property supports it. So it sounds to me like that was the way he was.
What's your recommendation?
Well, this letter is to inform him that that we will not be improving his intent to excavate based upon recommendation of planning board council. So I think that's, I think it's the right move going forward.
I agree with you.
And this is a, just as a brief trip through history, back in the late 80s, the legislature enacted an RSA that put the responsibility for permitting and approving gravel pits on the towns. And Tufton Borough, among many towns, did not embrace that when it was enacted. And didn't become, wasn't really brought to our attention until we did have a new gravel pit permit application submitted by the Whitney Trust several years ago. That sort of triggered the state to start looking at some of these other ones and saying, you know.
Well, it's tough to embrace an unfunded mandate. It'd be nice if the new legislators who we will elect to replace the old legislators who are there will change the gravel tax to something that creates enough revenue so you can maintain this sort of permitting process at least. I mean, I think it's at 3 cents currently. And 2 cents, I'm sorry, I was corrected by my codes enforcement officer, but 2 cents a yard.
Yeah.
So if somebody takes out 10,000 yards, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And yet they're charging currently, I'm gonna say for unprocessed bank rent, it's at least $15 a yard.
$14, $15.
Yeah, so the tax implication in this over-regulated, over-taxed scenario that they like to paint is pretty de minimis.
Yes.
Mhm.
Less than 1/10 of 1%.
Yeah.
Do you need a motion for this?
Yeah, it'll shut me up. I'll make the motion to
Okay.
sign.
I'm sorry, I'll second it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Well, as anyone knows about excavating,
We're getting started on these water plants.
Yeah.
We don't pay any taxes.
All right. Next, we have a notice of intent to cut for lot 16-1-4.
I'll move we sign that.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next, we have a right of burial for Daniel and Cheryl Mariso. This is at the Town Hall Cemetery.
I'll move we sign the right of burial.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We need to have this notarized.
I do that, don't worry, yeah.
Next, we have a proposal from White Mountain Survey and Engineering to provide us a cost estimate on the 19-mile beach improvement plan that he presented. Is that at our last meeting?
Yes.
Yes, all right. And so for $800, an estimated $800, he will develop a fully costed construction estimate for that work.
Is there a target date on that? Because I know the CIP is interested in it.
I don't.
I know he's planning on getting it done before we get into the warrant article.
Right. Right. I don't see a.
That was a specific request from the CIP to the
Yep.
selectmen.
Okay.
And a reasonable request.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I don't see a date specified on this, but,
We can stamp it priority.
right,
And Gina, our Parks and Rec director, has got the money.
she's got the money to pay for that, so
So I'll
that's
make a
good.
motion that we sign.
All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then we have. There we go. All right. Selectmen's update. Want to go first?
But, sure. Budget hearings are going along pretty well. I have to ask the chairman if he will attend the next one, because I was unable to really fully explain the master plan
Okay.
and what expenses have been paid, what ongoing expenses might need to be paid, et cetera, et cetera. So we approved, or got approval on the budgets as they went through, but that was one where I stumbled. So if you don't
Yep.
mind,
Yep.
I think it's November 23rd is our next one, next.
I did speak to Bill about that, because our next one's November 15th, but he can't make that one, but he can make the 27th.
Okay.
Yeah, I have planning board on the 15th.
Yeah, it's
So-
not gonna hold up the
Right.
Right.
budget, there's plenty to do.
Yep.
I did happen to review the police proposals from both companies, so I'm ready to vote on that when you guys are.
Okay.
I have one question on that. I researched if we legally can accept the second one, because it wasn't in our hands on the date, but it's my understanding it was at the post office, we just didn't pick it up. Do I have the correct understanding?
We initially thought that, but after it got tracked, Andy found it was not delivered until the Saturday, so it did not arrive on time.
I'm not gonna stumble around on a day.
No.
And if Harriman wants to sue us for accepting it, I'd gladly have them do that and pay their attorney lots of money. I mean, I don't know what, it's like no harm, no foul.
Exactly. I want all the
Right.
people who apply to be reasonable, and I can't. But, so I agree with you, let's consider the issue.
And you have Chief Shigori's recommendation letter in there
Yes.
too, right? Okay.
Really?
It's,
Just
in-
recommend
it's in here.
Harriman.
Yep.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
I don't need to read that, 'cause I'm not. All right, I'll read it.
Yeah, there you go.
And their target date is November 15th of next year, correct? Harriman?
I'm not sure.
Yep, that's what I read.
Um, That wasn't my first choice, so it doesn't matter to me. My first choice was the alternative company,
Alva.
Yeah.
And what did you base that on?
A couple of things. First of all, they're using the engineering company that we generally use, which is
HEB.
HEB, thank you.
Mhm.
They seem to be more LED centric, if you will,
Yes.
which I think is important. And the facilities that they have recognized as being projects that they're on seem to be closer at hand, maybe more
Yes.
appropriate size. Harriman's, and
I made the
those are
list.
those are the basic reasons. They're both within $1,000 of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just seemed less institutional. I sort of bend in that direction, but I'd certainly love to have your feedback and tell me where I'm wrong.
first thing I looked at was working with HEB. I worked with Dave Ford and Ben Ladd, and almost on a weekly basis, a couple of us were headed to HEB in Conway, and a $485,000 project for a bridge at Lang Pond went down to, we paid $147,000 and accomplished the same anti-pollution with phosphorus and the beach, and the Hersey family was happy with it, and everybody else was happy with it. So I have confidence in their abilities, and I think they understand the issues in Tuftonboro. There's another question I have that doesn't have anything to do with these two companies, and that is, I was on the police station committee that I thought gave an excellent job. Andy was a very good spokesman, and to me it's a no-brainer of taking the work that was done there and planting it on the site across from the library. I don't know why we need to re-examine about building here, why we need to examine putting it on some other properties. So,
Well, I think it's important that we review that stuff. I mean, that's probably the best place to put it. Who knows?
well, they've already done the perk testing, you know, on the property.
Right, but there's,
Excuse me, I didn't mean to.
yeah.
Good job. So,
I mean, there's benefits to every location, and
Right.
there's drawbacks for every location, and just reminding the public and ourselves what those benefits are and problems are. I mean, the other part of it is selling the deal to the public, and
Yes.
that's going to require some participation by this firm and their architects and
Yes.
whatever. So we need to take that into account. I'm not in a big hurry to get this under this year's warrant. I don't expect
We're not anticipating bringing it to the
Right.
town meeting for 2019.
So we've
We've
got-
got other fish to fry this year.
Yeah, we've got plenty of time to
Yep.
put a good project together that makes sense and works, and have a number of public meetings so that we can get it out there. And that's really the only way we can get these things done.
I agree with your analysis and your logic, and I'll support
Yep.
that move.
Do you want to wait? I mean, I know I kind of hijacked your selectmen's
No, that's,
thing, but
that's.
we don't need to vote on this at this
We,
moment in time.
no, we don't. These proposals, both of them, were created toward a timeline of delivering a product that would be available to get into the 2019 cycle. And
Right.
maybe that was their assumption because we were
Right.
starting in the fall. But I'm comfortable dealing with it next week. I think sooner rather than later, we
The
gotta get
other
closer.
part of that, I mean, I realize it's not an enormous, hospital or some
Mhm.
other project, but invite them, let them sell us what they can do. I mean, we haven't met these people either.
Mhm.
And so there has to be a certain je ne sais quoi with whoever you hire.
I have, when you came aboard, you were kind of the leader of, we talk about things, then table it for a week or two so people who watch YouTube can weigh in on it and whatnot. And I have no problem tabling this until we can have these people in to speak to us. And I'll make that in form of a motion.
It sounds like a reasonable approach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. We'll send out some invitations. Do you want to second
Yeah.
that motion?
How's that go? All right, all those in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion passes, and again, maybe in our omnibus session next week, there would be an opportunity for these folks to,
Right.
Well, it's a perfect opportunity. Someone wants to stop by and say, I think this or I think that.
yeah. All right, anything else?
That's it, other than we do a budget hearing now.
Okay.
I want to pay Selectman Albee a compliment.
Comments fine.
I thought his presentation of the budget, especially the police budget, the police chief came in and negotiated several things down. You made a comment that, and I support 100%, this board, and not to be self-serving, worked on that budget, so whatever the personnel issues are there, we were covered.
Yeah.
And I thought that was attacked. And I know you voted against it, but...
Well, I voted against because I voted for the budget we proposed.
Yes.
I'm not gonna vote for two budgets.
Right.
I'm not gonna vote for one.
Right.
I think it's a little short-sighted. I mean, I would rather add the $23,000 or whatever the difference was to the police budget and then put it in the undesignated fund balance at the end of the year. And I would not have it there and then have the opportunity to put someone in place in our police department.
Correct.
That might be more trained, better serve the community, et cetera. But
I just wanted to pay you a compliment.
well, you don't need
did
to,
a nice job.
That's what we do. That's why I get paid all this money.
Big bucks.
That's right.
Right?
Well, and all the enjoyment as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ed?
Yes, a couple of things.
Yeah.
Carl Cook's mother passed away,
She did.
and Jackie Rollins came to us, and in the obituary, it didn't list a particular place to send contributions, but it said do something nice. I think that's a fair representation.
Mm-hmm.
And Jackie's recommendation is that the contribution made to the Tom LaFave Fund for $100.
Is there a Tom LaFave fund?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you making that motion?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
The next item is, just want to update CIP. They're moving along nicely. Have you folks seen this that they've developed so far?
At the meeting that we were at, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
As I understand it, there's two things that may be added. One is the 19-mile bay study that we talked about today, and the other is the beach update.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so those are two things that as soon as we can get some paperwork to them, because they would want to be wrapped up by mid-November, so these can get printed. Before those two things are added in, the capital capacity is 869, and we're already $46,000 over. Are there any?
I don't think we are though. I mean, if you look at the list, first of all, I gotta mention my position that the capital capacity is premised upon, and thankfully I was here at the time, the deification of the select board and budget committee in the 80s and 90s. So their numbers were perfect, so that must be our capital capacity. And now we're going forward from that position. It seems kind of silly, but I think I would think it would be a factor of the taxable property, the amount of taxation, et cetera, based on other towns. But there are a couple of things on that list that I don't believe we're going to be doing. I mean, the head wall or the bulkhead in Milton, we're not doing that next year.
Correct.
I don't know that we're doing 19-mile, oh, maybe we are doing the 19-mile pier.
Well, we'll know more about what happens when the design and permitting work gets completed.
What I'm asking is, when they ask for me, what does the board support? I want to make sure I represent the board type thing. I've gone through and have circled some things that, you know, are already in the works. Town tax map, for example, we are doing that. The fire rescue, there were 3 items there that we have voted on. The lease purchase of the equipment and the SCBA capital reserve. For highway, it's $50,000 for road construction. I'm not sure what it is for pavement, but I put it in 235 with a question mark. Under Parks and Recreation, I don't have a figure there. Fire station is 188. That's a bill. Police facility capital reserve for 50,000, and that comes to 737. The ones that are circled, we've already voted on. You know, I'll just give you an example. I don't know, in the spirit of the library project, if we do the entrance doors, for example, to here, maybe we could set that off for a year. So, but think about it in the next meeting. I want to represent you guys fairly.
When is the next CIP meeting?
The 7th.
The day after elections?
Yep. I had 2 other things to bring up.
Okay.
Road agent bills, you know me, I've done a cost analysis of how much is left in the budget, assuming $58,000 from the budget goes to winter maintenance.
Right.
And there's the Fletch bill, the Freightliner bill, the painting bill for the buildings, a crack sealing bill, and of course the first winter storm. But some of these bills, go back to September, and they haven't been submitted yet. I just want to make sure that this year we got the 7th year in a row going over the budget. And if there is an emergency, come in and see us, and
I've started to see that as a tradition.
It's certainly not a welcome trend.
The other thing is, I think it might be a logical explanation, but on the bills that we signed for Mountainside Landscaping and James Bean, I see 2 3-hour bills for $114 on 10/18/18, and they seem to be identical. And I'd just like an explanation. I wanted to make sure it wasn't a mistake.
Yeah, I guess that brings up the 6-wheeler question.
Yes.
If you remember the colloquy that I had with the road agent regarding the 6-wheeler, and we just determined we weren't going to spend a lot of money, like $40,000.
Fix the old
amount. And then I did the math extemporaneously on what it would cost to hire somebody to do it. I think I came up with $95 an hour or whatever the number was, but I said, put it out on the street, let's get it.
Yes.
Well, what happened, from my understanding, is that the road agent went out and bought a 6-wheel dump truck.
Yes.
I have 2 issues with that initially. One is, we don't know what the market rate is. Unless it goes on the street for bid, we don't have no idea what the hourly market rate is.
The only rate is what the town set when he was hired, and that's the same rate for a truck and a plow operator. And what is it, $32 an hour or something?
Yeah, but you can't run a 6-wheeler for $32 an hour.
That's why he got rid of the last one. He told me that.
Right, okay, but now he's bought another one. Okay, so now we're in a situation where 2 things are problematic. One, we don't know what to charge because we don't know what the market rate is.
Yes.
And the second is, are we married to this truck? Did he want it? What if we decide next year that we're going to purchase another 6-wheeler for the town?
Yep.
Now how much resistance are we going to get from our road agent, who's going to obviously say, hey, I bought this truck to do the work.
Bingo.
So, once again, we need to have our road agent come in, and
He's due to come in the 6th.
he's coming the 6th?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll see on that.
Go ahead and then
All right.
I'll jump back in.
Couple of things. The Watershed Management Study Committee met with the consultant and spent most of the day on Friday walking around and looking at different areas to be included in the study with suggested proposed mitigation actions. And we're looking primarily at areas where there's large amounts of runoff water into the lake and or tributaries going into the lake. Using a model that they have based upon the type of surface and the topography and that sort of thing. They will be putting together estimates of flows at various points into the tributaries and recommendations for a variety of installation of a variety of features to take some of the nutrients out of the water as it goes down toward the lake. The experience of the consultant with this stuff is way more than what I have, and
All right, thanks.
so I'm thankful that we have them involved in the process, and I think we made a good start on Friday. We spent time at 19 Mile Beach and over by Union Wharf, parking lot by the Pier 19 store, and some locations along the Melvin River, and then they continued after lunch when I had to go on to something else and visited some other areas as well. So it is encouraging to me that when we started the process of putting together this watershed management plan project, Wolfboro expressed some interest and then backed away from it. But after the algae bloom in Winter Harbor this summer, they're much more interested and are now wanting to get involved and put some resources up to support their piece of this as well. So I think it's yeah, nothing like a little emergency to help focus your thinking. And there hadn't been any conversation in terms of dollars from them at this point. And again, the Lake Winnipesaukee Association is the organization that's doing the study, and they're managing the grant that we got. The consultants work for them, and it's so it's a positive thing as we look at it going forward. A couple of weeks ago, we got a call from LRPC looking for some volunteers to do work on a short-term cell phone signal data collection project. This is with the Federal Communications Commission. They're looking for better data on cell phone coverage in rural areas, with the idea, I think, of encouraging the carriers that have licenses to step up their coverage level. So I reached out to the Tuftonboro Association, and a couple of board members there had time and interest available, attended a training session on how to use the equipment, and then spent a couple of days driving around the roads of Tuftonboro, collecting this data. And that was Dan Barnard and Sue Wingate were the two people that stepped up. And Adam Thompson was also interested in observed that driving into some of the private roads, maybe riding in a Marktown vehicle as opposed to somebody's private car made some sense. And he spent one day as part of that process. And I think they maybe went out and did some, the plan was to go out on the fireboat and do some signal monitoring out on the water. I haven't had any feedback on that, but it was a real short fuse thing that came up, and I want to express my appreciation for the volunteers that stepped forward and said, you know, we'll work it into our schedule, spend a couple days doing it, and hopefully that will percolate up into improvement in cell phone signal coverage in the town of Tuftonboro.
I have some follow-up information.
Yes, sir.
When I spoke to Jeff Hayes in passing, indicated that there was some incomplete information, and I said, please contact this office about what we need to assist. Can you reach out to him, Karen?
Yep.
Thank you. Again, he was complimentary about how Tuftonboro steps up to the plate on all these issues. So, thank you to your friends who helped out.
No, it was good for them to do that. You have some more things?
Yes, I'd like to address the police department. The comments I'm going to make, it's people who've made them to me. There seems to be no movement on part-time officers, and we're in a critical situation. I'll just be blunt. There's an issue about police presence at the opening and closing of school and police patrols. There certainly is an impact on our chief and our sergeant who are being overworked. You know, they deserve some time off. I think that next week we need to instruct the chief to submit the names of the candidates for part-time officers so we can approve them, or at least put a handle on that. We need blue lights on our streets. And did you talk to your friend yet about the name I gave you?
I did not. No.
You'd be
But
interested in what
Yep.
she has to say, and it's all positive.
Yep.
This needs to be done. On that issue, I make a motion, we instruct the chief to submit the name of 2 candidates for our next meeting.
It seems to me it's more appropriate to just have a sit-down update session with the chief.
Sir, we need to move forward. It's been a month and a half to 2 months, and there's been no action taken. And I'm going back to optics. You used the word optics.
And I appreciate your position there. I don't think it's been that long since we actually sat down, did his budget, and figured out how we're gonna pay for this stuff and where we're gonna go with it.
I'll defer to your judgments.
I'd invite the chief in. He's gonna be there on Tuesday next week for the election. I think we should invite him in and chat about it.
Yep. Actually, I see him in the wings right now. Chief.
Oh.
Right.
Right.
Good morning.
Want me to repeat what I said?
I heard it.
Okay. We need bodies, Mark.
I agree.
And you're overworked, sir.
We're doing the best we can.
The other last thing I was going to say is that if we get the specials aboard, help the sergeant and the chief, we also are grandfathered as far as the number of hours a month they can work. So.
Yeah, I'm not a real fan of part-time employment, but What's your update, Chief? How are the candidates?
So we've got 4 that are still in the process for the full-time position. I did have 2 people say they would do it as, I have nobody that's applied as a part-time officer, straight up to work for Tufton Borough as a part-time officer. I do have 2 people from another agency that approached to work as a kind of per diem detail rate. In other words, they would work for their department as a detail here.
At the detail rate?
At
They
detail
bring their
rate.
own car?
I would say they'd be bringing their own car at that, yes. I mean, that's, the thing of it is, I calculated out yesterday, at this point, I've saved, I think about $800. In other words, from where we
Right.
would have been spending to where we are spending, we're about $800 that we've saved.
So you have about 10 hours worth of detail.
It's a little more than that, but yeah, not a lot more.
That's because actuarially, the donated time has to go through your budget, correct?
That's correct.
So.
Yeah, every week that comes out of my budget.
Right, but, so whether it comes out of your budget or whether it comes out of vacation days and sick leave, that money is available, correct?
Well, vacation
Actuarially.
days and sick leave do come out of my budget. If I took a vacation day, it's out of my budget. If the sergeant took a vacation, it'd be out of my budget, so that's how come it's still coming out of my budget. So like I said, I figured it out, I'm probably about $900. I've still got to come up with, obviously a few thousand to get uniforms, but I figure we're breaking even on hiring a full-time person at this point, at the rate it's going. That's where we're at. I mean,
Well, timing wise, does it make sense to use up some money with detail? I mean, hiring police officers at the detail rate is, I really don't like that idea, but if that's the only way to get through from here to there, I guess that's what we have to
that
do.
we could probably do, well, obviously they work full-time in their own
Right.
departments too, so it'd be probably, we'd get 1 or 2 shifts a week. I'm not sure what their availability is either, whether it would be, you know, that's what we'd get, probably to
And are the 4 candidates that you have currently for full-time far enough out that we're gonna need to do that? We're gonna need to hire some detail.
well, it depends. One's certified, so that would be pretty quick if everything worked out. The other 3 are not certified, they'd have to go to the academy, and that puts us till next summer.
Right.
So you definitely need coverage during that period.
Right.
Right.
The other thing that I don't know, not that it affects the budget per se, but it affects coverage, is, you know, at some point I expect someone to be back from their leave. I thought it was coming up soon, like this week maybe, at least somehow, some shifts, but I haven't heard a thing, so I don't know.
Okay.
So that kind of cuts into the whole, do we need, what kind of
So
coverage
have
we
you
need?
reached out to that person to ask what his schedule is? What their schedule is?
Which one? The part-timers or the ones that work per diem
The
or?
officer on leave.
The last I heard, they were moving back the 30th, but I haven't heard anything since then. So, and I didn't know if moving back meant working or just be back at the house then. Obviously, that's 2 days.
Conversation needs to be had.
Yes.
We gotta plan ahead here, we gotta have some idea what we're doing.
Yes, and I understand though there's been some setbacks along the way, so that could have influenced the timing. And plans obviously are changing.
What I see, sir, is there's 3 different levels here.
Mhm.
There's the officer,
Mhm.
that's in flux, my heart goes out to him, and that's issue number 1, and I think we've managed it. Excuse me. Issue number 2 is filling the full-time officer's position.
Mhm.
The 3rd issue that's totally separate is part-time officers.
Mhm.
Okay, to me, they're like 3 separate criminal cases, and they're not related, correct?
Well, they all do it. They are related at one point because my budget, but
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
The DNA level.
Right. I think,
So
I think through conversations that I've had through citizens, there were 3 names I gave you, correct? Of people that would be interested, I was told would be interested in working as a special officer. Do you remember that conversation?
You gave me 2 names.
Okay.
I don't remember the third one.
Well,
But
after
I've since
that-
talked to
I'll tell you what, after the meeting, I'll give you those 3 names, and next week.
well, I know
could
I
you
know
interview
2 of the
them?
names, but and I know 2 names.
Yes.
One of them wasn't one that you gave me, and like I said, they would be willing to work our detail rate to cover some shifts. That would be, we could do. It still would be probably another week before we could start doing that. The problem with taking them on as part-time is as our officers is I have to do the background, the hiring, and all that stuff, and that is going to be a cost and b a time. Not that I think there's any issues, it's just going to be a
There's no
time.
reciprocity.
Not if I put them on under our authority as our officers, if you will, I have to feel comfortable. I have to send a form to the academy saying I've done a background and all this stuff's been done. If they're working like detail covering, I don't have to do that per se. Kind of like when I work the Sandwich Fair, I'm just doing it as a detail, or if I'm doing it for an event. But if they're working under our authority, our liability, if you will, I have to sign off on, I have to do a full background and invest, and they get charged under
So
powers.
there
vested.
isn't any reciprocity.
There is reciprocity, but to do as, if they're our officers, I have to send a form into the academy saying they are hired by the town of Tuftonboro as our officers, and this is what it will entail for,
That's what I'm suggesting we do, sir.
what,
That's what I suggest we do, that we get these people aboard as Tuftonboro special officers.
okay, well, I don't know, what they offered up to me was doing it as
Detail.
details, is what they were offering it up. That's what these
Well,
two
yeah,
are.
I mean, it's significantly more money.
Well, it also means that we're not putting them on as, we're not hiring uniform, we're not buying uniforms, we're not doing a lot of that. And I don't have to go through the whole background because they're actually working for their agency, doing it that way. But that's the difference.
Folks, what I'm hearing in town is we need to have blue lights opening and closing the school.
I'd love to, I just don't have the people.
I'll finish. Opening and closing the school.
Yeah.
And citizens want to see cruisers on their road.
Mhm.
This is not a personal attack at you, sir.
Mhm.
You're busy, you're out there at night, and you're doing your day job. I'm supporting the police in town.
Mhm.
People who talk to me are supporting police.
Mhm.
If there's an issue of budgeting, I will sit down with the selectmen and see if we can find the money someplace. We need wheels in town
Well, let's
for a
have
number of
the,
reasons.
let's have the chief report to us next Tuesday. We're gonna see him at the polls. What these officers that are thinking they might like to do a detail here in Tuftonboro, what their available schedule is. Because we need to start at some point, and I think we need to figure out, is that even gonna work? Is there available time where they're full-time police officers somewhere else gonna fit in with what we need? And continue on the operation of the candidates that he has in hand.
The issue of coverage is not just here, I mean, Molten Bro's 4 short.
Yeah.
Madison's 2 short, they're half their department's gone, I mean, so, yeah, it's great but we're fighting with all these, and there's at least 5 other towns in this county looking for officers, so. And it's what, I'd love to be fully staffed and everybody else,
After
but
the
that's the
meeting,
way
I'll
it
give
is.
you the 3 names, and
Alright.
my expectation is that we have another conversation of substance in a week.
I'm sure we will.
Now, the
Nothing else to do on that
the
day.
other thing under Selectmen's update is oral board. I'm glad you're here. Is there any Tuftonboro citizen involved in the process?
No, I did the oral boards like a week ago.
And has there been any selectmen involved in the process of the oral boards?
No, because I scheduled it real quick as soon as I got the results. There will be involvement as we narrow it down, but right now there's 4. Not a lot picking out there. It's a topic of conversation statewide.
Yes.
You get the bulletin from the academy. Used to have articles in it about this, that, and the other updates to laws. Now it's about 2/3 ads looking for help. It's not something everybody else is facing too.
Yes.
So
Everybody.
You are
pretty much.
It's
Pretty much.
You know, when you get 2% or 3% unemployment, everybody's got the same.
Well, the restaurant just closed in Portsmouth because they couldn't find help.
Yes.
So it's
Yep.
it's not just law enforcement. It's
Yes.
private sector too.
Right.
But obviously everybody would like to, I'd like to be fully staffed too, but they're just not out there. And that's a conversation I just had this morning with another chief that's fighting to get people to, so.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chief.
Good luck, sir.
All right, anything else?
No, that's it. Is there not enough?
Let's move on to correspondence.
Thank you.
Yep. We have a letter here from the town manager of Wolfboro asking that we place the parcel that they recently purchased from the Witten Trust into current use. And so we have asked our town attorney to look at that issue.
And also
Whether it would qualify under the provisions of the current use as it stands, and also as it relates to the use it would be put to by the town of Wolfboro, whether that is something that would qualify under current use or not. So, and he is in the process of investigating that. All right, let's see.
You don't want to do the signs?
Huh? We can talk about signs again. You like the one that says GPS is wrong, not a through road?
Yes. That was off the website. If it saves one trailer truck getting stuck and ripping its fuel line off and whatnot. I have no idea what they cost or where we get them.
Yeah.
Adam Thompson gave me that.
Okay. Well, I'm interested in that. I mean, this is the standard Class 6 no maintenance sign, and I.
Right. And I don't know that the drivers understand what Class 6 means. Especially if they're driving a Class 8 truck.
So,
of the last 3 or 4 that I've been involved in or have found, the vehicles submerged on a Class 6 road, GPS set or my map set. And I realize that Ron White says you can't fix stupid, but
yeah. So,
Yeah, and I don't know how much we can, I mean, we should post those, obviously.
Right.
But I don't know how much control we have over what.
I mean, I asked how many months ago that there be a sign that we have on all our Class 6 roads. They put up on Federal Corner Road, just past. No, it's never been done. So,
That's not a through road.
no, it's not a through road.
Right.
And
That
that's,
goes through,
right.
Mhm.
It's not passable.
well,
Right.
And that's where I found a trailer truck embedded.
on North Line Road?
No, go Federal Corner Road, comes out
Okay.
Wyland Road.
Willand Road. Yeah.
Woodland Road.
Yep. Okay. Have an email here regarding a proposed project that Conservation Commission submitted to CIP to build a parking area and trail at the Great Meadow. Well, over a period of 3 years, and the question was if it should be budgeted incrementally. And Diane's recommendation, which I concur with, is that it be an article on the warrant for the total amount as a non-lapsing article, and then over that period of time, the monies would be expended out of that approved amount, rather than trying to piecemeal it through a little bit this year, a little bit the next year.
However, there's been a wrinkle. Where the parking lot is going is, there's a weed control, the bamboo, which is a bit higher than this
Yep.
building.
Yep.
The only way to get rid of it is, in September, spray it.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? Half the parking lot is in the conservation easement for the Great Meadow, and part of the easement says no chemicals whatsoever. So, I was gonna ask Steve about that, but
Yeah.
he was running over, so.
Yeah.
It's an interesting wrinkle.
Well, was it the intention to have that on this year's warrant?
Yeah.
And do they have
If you do it incrementally,
bid
it's a budget
proposals
item.
or anything?
I'm sorry?
Did they put this out for?
Yes, they got a bid from Jeff Moody, who would, and I believe it was under, but I know it was well.
So as
under.
long as they put it on the street, I just don't want
Right.
to put 12 grand away.
Right.
Yeah,
Hope for the best.
yes,
Yeah.
okay.
All right. Next item is the Piper Road. We voted on gates on Piper Road, and my understanding was that that they had put gates up, but when I went down there, what I found is it's not, it's just a cable. And my understanding is that doesn't meet the gates and bars rule. So actually, Mr. Olwick stopped when I was down there, and I chatted with him a little bit. This is the kind of similar to what we have at the transfer station that I think is appropriate. And I don't know if we need to revisit our decision, but it's my opinion that a gate is what we need there if they're going to close it off, and not a cable.
It was a while ago that we talked to that person, but wasn't it they were gonna do this gate?
Yes, right.
So I guess we just recommend to them that this is what we want.
Right, so what we ought to do is send them a letter and with
Sounds good. Picture.
a picture of that on there.
There's probably a source for that gate somewhere.
On the internet.
Or something.
On the internet, yeah. Yep,
Did you look at the hooking mechanism?
I've been down there. Oh, yeah.
It's functional, right?
It is functional, but it's not a gate.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't, the safety issues with the cable too.
Yeah.
They
It's
should-
on hooks, and it's got,
I'm sure, but
Right.
to me, it's functional.
It is functional, but it's not a gate. So if it's a private driveway and you want to put a cable across it, that's fine. But if it's a town road, you can't do that.
So when they're screaming down the Piper Lane and their snow
Yeah.
machines, and some guy cuts
Right.
his head off because of the cable.
All right. Next up, I have, we talked about a sign for the beach on Cow Island. And Jack had taken pictures of signs at 19 Mile Beach and at the Central Park Trail as a way of helping beach users out on the Cow Island understand that certain types of activity are not appropriate. I'm not suggesting we put a sign up now. It's the end of the season, but if you had a chance to look at this.
Yeah, I did. I guess the
It may
issue
be
in my
a problem.
mind is that when we went to the island meeting, the
Right.
center of Cow Island seemed to be on everybody's priority list. And I think we need to all sit down and have a chat about what the intention is out there. I mean, I think we put a big sign up saying this is what you can do at the beach. There's gonna be a lot of interpretation about where's this going, now they wanna make this a beach, et cetera. I just think we need to
Think about it.
Yep.
codify our policy or.
My comment was going to be, of the things that have the null set there, how many have we had complaints on in the last year or two? Only complaints we have had is people considering it their own beach and making noise and swearing at people. We haven't had a complaint about dogs or drinking or fireworks or.
Well,
Correct?
we did have a complaint from a neighbor out there about drinking on the beach. Yeah, that was what prompted looking at signage. I don't disagree with you in terms of.
I mean, there's
moving
talk
forward.
about putting a conservation easement on the land, there was talk about.
Yeah, and most of the feedback that I've had from people has been negative about that. Except maybe from people that own property. I don't know, they think it's a wonderful idea, but,
You know, if there's disorderly conduct going on next to your house, you call the police and they go out and
right.
investigate.
Yep, all right. The next piece of correspondence has to do with, this is a follow-up on the Mirror Lake boat ramp area. And I know you've been out there. I don't know if anything further on that.
I go by it, if not, now with my new house, I go by it twice a day. And
The one on Sugar Living.
what? Yes.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I agree with the three people who came to that they've changed their mind. It's much safer than ever before. I realized that this guy had a parking issue or backing his trailer around, but you know, I just don't see it as an issue. It's a legal boat ramp, and have we had any complaints other than this? No.
I haven't heard anything.
Well, it's
when
an area that has, that's tight and doesn't have a lot of room to stage vehicles or park. And so it's always been a concern there. We don't have a place, we don't have land there that we can make available for parking.
You know, we have two post offices that have problems parking, but
Yep.
I mean, you just move up and down the lake, and the Libby Museum parking lot for boat trailers
Right.
is another issue.
that one there, I have more big boats backing in and ladies directing their husbands and whatnot, and it's manageable.
Okay. Next is a memo from the Joint Law Safety Committee about items from the annual safety inspections 2018. Soliciting a response when the items have been mitigated. The item we have is the basement of the town offices. Clean out and organize. I know we put Karen, we had people tagging stuff down there, right? Do you know where we are on that?
I think you asked for it to be done at the end of last month, because you were gonna go on with the Boy Scouts, yeah.
What's that?
Lloyd had asked for it to be done by the end of last month, so
Right.
that's what I told people, yeah.
Right. I haven't been down there recently, so I don't know
I haven't.
what,
I waited for people to do what they do. Well, I've also contacted the people with the building up here where the books are on the shelves, so they can use the shelves. They're willing to help me, so.
yep. So that was the item that we had, joint loss. email from Cow Island residents that are concerned about
The easement?
the easement, the use of trails on the island, the use of the beach, and suggesting that maybe we wanted to sell all of Cow Island back to the property owners on Cow Island.
There's a thought.
Yeah, it was mentioned to me, yeah.
So, I don't remember how we ended up getting it.
The beach is almost
Yeah.
like the parking area at Mirror Lake boat ramps. It's just a unique property.
Yep. All right. Next, we have the University of New Hampshire Technology Transfer Center user survey. Looking for an update on how or whether we use the technology transfer services. This is supposed to be done online, Karen? Is that?
I think it's either. Is there a paper copy attached to? I can't remember.
There's paper here.
Yeah, I think you can do it either way.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
It's an administrative question. I mean, I
Yeah.
have no idea about
Yeah.
the transfer.
Yeah, this is like training that we'd like to see. Et cetera. I'll take a stab at filling it out. I don't know that, I certainly don't have all the answers, but
You know all the questions.
no, I don't even know all those. NRA has their annual meeting coming up. This invitation, and it's on Wednesday, November 7th at the Puritan Back Room in Manchester. If we have, I don't know if Clay is planning to attend, if any of us want to attend. I'm out of town, but that's there. Health Trust annual meeting is December 6th. If we want to attend. Got an email from a citizen regarding a link to bird watching and wanting to reemphasize that Cops Pond is the finest spot in New Hampshire for bird watching and listening.
Jack has looked at that and has a recommendation.
Okay, and I understood Steve Wingate might be doing some work on it too, so
Well,
I think
they might want to talk.
Hey, Jack,
Yes.
you had somebody going out to Cops Pond to that platform?
Yeah, they never went out.
Oh,
They got busy on something else. That's the issue I have with a lot of projects.
what's that?
That's the issue I have with a lot of projects. They get busy on something else and
Yep.
they get pushed away.
Two stringers need to be replaced, right?
At least one floor joist going across, maybe two.
All right.
I asked the Conservation Commission if in the future they're going to put a lookout station with this other project we were talking about, the parking lot. Can the same person do two of them?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Steve just has a lot on his,
Oh, yeah.
on his plate,
Yep.
but
Yep. All right. Next item of correspondence is a follow-up email from somebody at New Hampshire Department of Safety regarding development of a procurement policy, which is something that's on our plate.
that goes to what I was gonna ask about the FEMA memo.
Yep.
But maybe that can go in that folder.
Good thing for us to spend some time on next week on election day.
That's the FEMA purchase policy, right?
That's the town purchase procurement policy that we need to have in order to be eligible for FEMA grants in the future, right? It was waived once. All right. And then a memo regarding the Brown Road project. This is from Jim, is that right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I crafted it with him, yeah.
You transcribed it?
Yeah.
Selectmen have estimated and approved $36,000 to come out of the additional allocation of highway block grant funds to complete this project. Jim mentioned on 10-5 that graveling the roadside edges will be $1,500 more than estimated by the selectmen. Additional costs were also incurred as clay was found under the road base paving and needed to be dug out and filled with gravel. A little extra was also spent on drainage. There is only $4,000 left of the $36,000 in the highway block grant that was approved to be spent. Therefore, we will be $7,500 short to complete the gravel edges. They are not done yet. Please approve an additional expenditure from the highway block grant of $7,500 to complete the gravel edges. That's something we can cover with him next Tuesday when we...
Well, I have an issue.
Yeah.
I asked, after the paving was done, how
Right.
much for the shoulders?
Right.
And he gave us an estimate, a quote from Carroll.
Yeah.
That's contract as far as I'm concerned. Go do it.
Okay.
And now all of a sudden his issue.
I think...
Excuse me, he did the quote, the 11.5 stays.
Yes.
Which just said additional expenditures for the, what was it, the clay
For the-
and
the
other things.
rebuilding
He
of the
messed
road
that
base.
up. He had some other, yes, exactly, for the road base, right?
Right.
So the gravel edges estimate did not change. That is the price.
Mhm.
It's just the other, you folks approved so much to come out of that block grant for the whole
Right.
project, and now he won't have enough of that. I mean, there's more money in that block grant, but you know what I mean? And you only approved so, you guys only approved so much.
Yeah. Well,
Work in progress.
yep. So I'm not sure what the total of that paving project is now.
I don't know offhand myself.
So,
Diane can give us that.
yeah. Can we deal with that next Tuesday, or do you?
I honestly don't know. I could give a call if you'd like, to see if it's something that's timely.
Well,
Has it been paid? I haven't driven up there, I should go
This has
up.
been paid.
Yeah, it's just
So
the
it's
only
been
thing,
paid, the gravel's in?
Mhm.
it's just the road edge
but
of
the,
it. Yeah.
but the shoulders haven't been done.
Shoulders, yeah.
Well,
Well-
he has quite a few bills that are outstanding.
Yep. Well, where we take the money from to pay for that beyond what we were gonna pay already, I think is a question. But we do want those shoulders gravelled, correct?
Yes, that's been done.
And there's more money in that block grant. It's just you only
Yes.
approved him to use so much, yeah.
But the block grant is not just there to do Brown Road.
No, I understand.
Right,
I'm just
so-
letting you know, yeah.
You know, we may wanna take money from someplace else in the budget where we have a surplus. But, so are the gravel shoulders done now?
Yes.
They are done, okay.
Just
So,
when I was there, they looked done.
all right, so,
We'll deal with it.
So let's-
I will ask again.
yeah,
Okay,
so,
okay.
so let's, he's gonna be here next Tuesday,
They
right?
weren't done as of Thursday.
I was gonna say, they weren't, that's the whole question.
What's that?
They're
They
not done.
weren't done as of
I
Thursday,
will-
they went down.
I will go double check.
He was waiting to do them until. May I go back to something in correspondence about the joint loss thing? There were a couple of
Yes.
other action items, I don't know if you wanted to look at those,
I thought,
besides the basement.
yeah, all right,
And maybe they don't pertain to you
I
folks, but I thought they.
I'm sorry, I thought.
No problem.
So town offices, townhouse, nothing, right?
Yeah, some
Town
might.
beach, all right. There were 2 items, all right. Picnic table to be replaced, I missed that, I'm sorry. And the ladder was replaced, I know that.
Okay.
Oh, and then at Union Wharf, holes need to be filled, pilings need to be replaced, sign for new parking ordinance. Well, the piling need to be replaced as part of the rebuild of the
Yes.
of the wharf. I don't know if the holes have been,
What holes?
Well,
And we're down
on the edges.
It's wash, there's a washout area
Next
on
to
one
the
side.
house.
Yeah. That has been,
because I didn't notice any on the deck or the paved area.
No, I had talked to Jim about status of signs, and there's about 4 locations.
yeah,
Just haven't been done.
okay. So that's still and I don't think there are new signs up down on the wharf from our ordinance.
Well, anywhere.
All right. We got a whole pile of other correspondence that I don't think we need to
No.
get
There's
into.
nothing in the other day.
No. All right. Any other business for today?
Anything to go over? We've already done it.
We do not.
We've done that stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Ugh.